My belongings were packed and left on the porch. A small note sat on top. Thanks for everything, but we need the space. That was it. No warning. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a life folded into boxes and placed outside like it didn't matter anymore. Let me ask you something. Have you ever given your everything to someone, only to realize one day you meant nothing to them? Because that's exactly what that moment felt like. I stood there frozen, not moving, not thinking, just staring at those boxes, like they didn't belong to me, like maybe this was happening to someone else. The door behind them, closed, locked, silent. That same door I walked through 1,000 times, laughing, cooking, living. Now it felt like a wall between my past and my reality. And the strangest part, no one came out, no one said anything, no one even looked at it. Was like I had already disappeared, like I had been erased. Before I even left I slowly walked closer. Every step felt heavier, like my body didn't want to accept what my eyes were seeing. I picked up the note again. Read it slowly. Thanks for everything. Those words hit hard, because I had given everything. My time, my energy, my love, my patience, my loyalty. And in return I got a sentence. But we need the space. Space. Such a small word. But it carried so much distance, so much rejection, so much finality. And in that moment, something inside me started asking questions. What did I do wrong? Was I too much? Or was I never enough? And that question, was I never enough? It's dangerous. Because once it enters your mind, it doesn't leave easily. It starts growing. It starts changing how you see yourself. It makes you doubt your worth, your value, your identity. And for a moment, I felt it. That deep, heavy feeling that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't enough. I sat down right there on the porch, next to my own life packed in boxes, not caring who passed by, not caring who saw me. Because in that moment, I had nothing left to protect. Just memories. And they started flooding in: the laughter, the conversations, the late nights, the small moments that felt so real, so meaningful. And suddenly they felt like illusions, like I had been living in a story that only I believed in. Have you ever experienced that? When your reality shatters, and you don't know which part was real, and which part was just hope. That's where I was, lost between what was, and what is. Trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. Time felt slow. Heavy. Like it didn't want to move forward. And neither did I. Because moving forward meant accepting the truth. And the truth was painful, that I didn't belong there anymore. That place that once felt like home was no longer mine. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to accept. Not the loss of a place, but the loss of belonging, because we all want somewhere to feel safe. To feel valued. To feel wanted. And when that's taken away, it shakes you deeply. I remember looking around, hoping someone would come out, say something, anything, even if it was just a simple explanation, but nothing happened, just silence. And that silence was louder than any words, because it told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the end. And that realization, it didn't hit all at once. It sank in slowly, like a weight pressing down on my chest, making it harder to breathe, harder to think, harder to accept. And in that moment, I felt something break inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a piece of me gave up. Because when you give your all to people, you expect something in return, not perfection, not forever, but at least respect, closure, acknowledgement. But I got none of that, just a note, and boxes, and a closed door. And for a while, I stayed there, not moving, not thinking, just sitting in that moment, letting it sink in. Letting the pain do what it does best, make you question everything. But here's something most people don't talk about. Moments like this, they don't just hurt you, they change you, they force you to see things you ignored. They force you to face truths you avoided. And slowly, very slowly, a different thought started forming. Not why did this happen? But what does this mean for me now? At first it felt strange, almost wrong. Like I wasn't supposed to think that way, but that question, it stayed. It grew, because deep down something inside me wasn't completely broken. Something was still there, still alive, still aware. And it was trying to shift me from pain to awareness, from confusion to clarity. I looked at those boxes again. But this time, I didn't just see loss, I saw something else. Everything I had left. Everything that was still mine. And that realization, it was small, but powerful. because it reminded me of something important, that I hadn't lost everything, that I was still here, breathing, thinking, feeling. And as long as I was still here, there was still something I could do, there was still a story to write. But I didn't fully understand that yet, that I was still in the middle of the pain, still trying to process everything, still holding on to the past, even though it was already gone. And that's where most people get stuck, between what they lost and what they could become. But what I didn't know was that this moment, this painful, uncomfortable, heartbreaking moment, was about to become the most important turning point of my life, because sometimes life doesn't gently guide you forward. Sometimes it pushes you hard, without warning, without explanation, until you have no choice but to move. And that's exactly what was about to happen next. So if you've ever felt rejected, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, if you've ever questioned your worth, stay with me, because what comes next will challenge everything you believe about pain, and might just show you a completely different way to see your own life. That night, I had nowhere to go, no plan, no backup. Just a few boxes, and a reality I wasn't ready to accept. Have you ever been in that moment, where life suddenly goes quiet, and all you're left with is yourself? That's where I was, standing there, as the sun slowly disappeared, watching the light fade. Just like everything I thought was stable in my life, people walked past, cars moved, life continued. But for me, everything had stopped. I picked up one box that it felt heavier than it should have. Not because of what was inside, but because of what it represented: memories, timed out, a version of me that no longer had a place. I started walking, not because I knew where I was going, but because I couldn't stay there anymore. And sometimes, that's how life works. You don't move because you're ready. You move because staying hurts more. Step by step, I carried those boxes, each step filled with thoughts, loud, overwhelming thoughts. Where will I go? What will I do now? How did everything fall apart like this? And the more I thought, the more lost I felt, because when your mind is full of questions, but life gives you no answers, it creates chaos, and that chaos can break you. I found a quiet place to sit, somewhere away from people, away from eyes, because I didn't want anyone to see me like that, broken, confused, empty. I placed the boxes down and just sat there, staring into nothing, trying to process everything. And that's when it hit me again. That question. Why me? Why did this happen? Why now? Why like this? And the more I asked, the deeper I sank, because why is a trap. It keeps you stuck in the past. It forces you to relive the pain again and again. And I could feel it happening. Why thoughts were pulling me down, dragging me into a place where everything felt hopeless. And for a moment, I stopped fighting it. I let the thoughts come. I let the pain speak. And it said things like, you weren't enough. You gave too much. You lost yourself for nothing. And the worst part, it sounded convincing, because pain has a way of making lies feel true. And if you're not careful, you start believing them. I sat there for a long time, not moving, not thinking clearly, just feeling everything at once. And then, something small happened. So small, most people would ignore it, but it changed everything. I looked at my hands, tired, shaking, but still holding on. And for some reason, that moment made me realize something: that I was still here. After everything, I was still here, breathing, thinking, aware. And that awareness, it created a pause. A break in the chaos. And in that pause, a different thought appeared. Not loud, not strong, but different. What now? Not why, not how, just what now? And that question shifted something inside me, because for the first time, I wasn't looking backward. I was looking forward. Even if I didn't know what was ahead, even if I felt lost, that question pulled me out of the past and placed me in the present. And that's where change begins. Right there. I in the present moment, where you still have control, not over what happened, but over what you do next. I took a deep breath. Slow, heavy, but intentional. And I said to myself, okay, this happened. Not denying it, not fighting it, just accepting it, because acceptance is the first step to moving forward. Not giving up, not agreeing with the pain, but acknowledging reality so you can start changing it. I picked up one box again. This time it felt different, still heavy, but not impossible, because now it wasn't just a reminder of loss. It was a responsibility. A signal that I had to move, that I had to do something. And I did. Not perfectly, not confidently, but willingly. And that made all the difference. I started walking again, still unsure, still confused, but moving. And movement is powerful, because the moment you move, you break the cycle of being stuck. You tell your mind, we're not staying here. And slowly, that movement started changing my thoughts. They became less chaotic, less overwhelming, more focused. Not on what I lost, but on what I could do. And that's when I realized something important. You don't need clarity to move forward. You just need a decision, a simple one. I will not stay here. That's it. And everything begins from there. That night, I didn't figure everything out, that I didn't have a plan, that I didn't suddenly feel strong. But I made a choice to keep going. Even if I didn't know where it would lead. And that choice was the beginning of something powerful. Because most people think change comes from big moments, big opportunities, big breakthroughs. But it doesn't. It comes from small decisions, made in difficult moments when it would be easier to quit. And that's exactly what this was. A difficult moment, a breaking point, a place where I could have stayed stuck, or started moving. And I chose to move. But what I didn't know was that this was just the surface, because the real battle was about to begin. Not outside, inside. Where the toughest fights always happen, where doubt gets louder, where fear gets stronger, where your past tries to pull you back. And what came next would test me in ways I wasn't ready for. So if you're still here, still listening, still holding on, don't stop now, because the next part is where everything changes again, where the real transformation begins, and it might just show you what you're truly made of. Days passed, but the pain didn't. It followed me, quietly, constantly, like a shadow that refused to leave. Have you ever tried to move forward, but your mind keeps pulling you back? That's where I was, walking ahead physically but mentally, still sitting on that porch, still holding that note, still hearing those words. Thanks for everything, but we need the space. It kept repeating again, and again, and again. And no matter how far I walked, I couldn't escape it. Because the hardest part of moving on is not leaving the place. It's leaving the memory. And my mind didn't want to let go. Everywhere I went, something reminded me, a smell, a sound, a simple moment, and suddenly, I was back there again, feeling the same pain as if nothing had changed. And that's when the real battle began. Not outside, inside. Because when your environment changes, but your thoughts don't, you stay stuck. And I was stuck. Between past and present. Between what was and what is. Trying to make sense of something that no longer existed. I started questioning everything, not just them, but myself. Was I too much? Did I give too much? Did I lose myself trying to keep them happy? And those questions, they didn't bring answers, they brought doubt. And doubt is dangerous because it slowly changes how you see yourself. It makes you forget your worth. It makes you shrink. It makes you feel like you were the problem even when you weren't. And for a while I believed it. I believed that maybe I wasn't enough, that maybe I gave too much of myself to people who were never meant to stay. And that realization, it hurt deeply, because it forced me to face something uncomfortable. I had built my identity around being needed, around being there for others, around giving and giving and giving. But I never asked myself one important question. Who am I without them? And when everything was gone, I didn't have an answer. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just about losing a home. This was about losing myself. And that's a different kind of pain, because when you lose yourself, you don't know where to start again, you don't know who you are anymore, you don't know what you deserve. And that confusion, it keeps you stuck. Days turned into nights, and nights felt heavier, because when everything gets quiet, your thoughts get louder. And mine were loud. Too loud. They kept replaying everything, looking for meaning, looking for closure, looking for something that would make it all make sense, but nothing came. Just more questions, more memories, more pain. And one night, I reached a point, at a breaking point. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet moment, where I felt completely exhausted, tired of thinking, tired of feeling, tired of trying to understand. And in that moment, I stopped. I didn't fight my thoughts, I didn't chase answers, I just sat there in silence. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel everything without resistance, without judgment. And something strange happened. The thoughts slowed down, the noise softened, and in that quiet space a new realization appeared. Maybe, just maybe, This wasn't about them at all. Maybe this was about me. Not what I lost, but what I needed to learn, and that thought, it changed everything, because instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" I asked, "What did this reveal about me?" And that question was uncomfortable, but powerful, because it forced me to look inward. To see patterns I ignored. To face truths I avoided. To understand where I gave too much, and where I forgot myself. And that's not easy, because self-awareness, it's not always pleasant. It shows you things you don't want to see. But it also gives you something priceless: growth, real growth. Not the kind that looks good on the outside, but the kind that transforms you from within. And slowly I started seeing things differently, not as a victim, but as someone who had a chance to rebuild. Not just my life, but myself. And that shift, it was small, but powerful, because it moved me from pain to purpose, from confusion to clarity. I started asking better questions. What do I deserve? What do I want? Who do I want to become? And for the first time, the answers weren't about anyone else, they were about me. And that felt new, uncomfortable, but freeing. Because I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I wasn't trying to fit into someone else's expectations. I was discovering myself. And that process, it wasn't easy. There were still hard days, days when the past came back, days when the pain felt fresh again. But this time it didn't control me. Because now I understood it. And once you understand your pain, it loses its power. You stop running from it and start learning from it. And that's when real transformation begins. But just when I thought I was finding my balance, life brought another challenge. Point one that would test everything I had learned so far. Because growth doesn't stop. It evolves. And what came next would push me even further. So if you're still here, still listening, still holding on, don't leave now, because the next part is where everything shifts again. Where the lessons turn into strength, and where you truly begin to rise. Something started changing. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, deeply. In a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I wasn't the same person who sat on that porch. I wasn't the same person who kept asking, "Why me?" I had started asking better questions, stronger questions, and those questions were creating a new version of me. Have you ever felt that shift? When you realize you're not who you used to be anymore? It's strange, because on the outside, everything looks the same, but inside, everything feels different. That's where I was. Still rebuilding, still healing, but no longer broken, and for the first time, I started noticing something. My thoughts were changing. Not completely, not perfectly, but noticeably. That voice that once said, "You're not enough," was getting quieter, and another voice was getting stronger. "You're learning. You're growing. You're becoming." And that voice felt different. It didn't judge me. It didn't attack me. It guided me. And I started listening. That's when I realized something powerful. The voice you listen to becomes your reality. And for so long, I had been listening to the wrong one. The one built from fear, from rejection, from pain. But now I was choosing differently. And that choice was changing everything. I began setting boundaries. Not loudly, not aggressively, but clearly. I stopped saying yes when I meant no. I stopped over explaining myself. I stopped trying to earn a place where I wasn't valued. And let me tell you something, that wasn't easy, because when you're used to giving everything, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong. It feels like you're losing people. But in reality, you're finding yourself. And that's exactly what was happening. I was finding myself again, piece by piece, thought by thought, decision by decision. And with every step, my confidence grew. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that needs attention, but a quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation because it knows its worth. And that kind of confidence is powerful. But with that power came a new challenge: people. Because when you change, people notice. And not everyone likes it. Some support you, some admire you. But some, they resist it, they question it, they doubt it. Because your growth reminds them of what they're not doing. And that makes them uncomfortable. I started seeing it in their tone and their reactions and the way they spoke to me. Some treated me differently, like they didn't recognize me anymore. And they didn't. Because I wasn't the same. I wasn't the one who would accept anything. I wasn't the one who would stay silent. I wasn't the one who would lose myself to keep others comfortable. And that created distance. Not because I wanted it, but because it was necessary, because growth requires separation. Separation from old habits, old patterns, old environments, and sometimes old people. And that can feel lonely, very lonely. because you're not who you used to be, but you're not fully who you're becoming yet. You're in between. And that space, it's uncomfortable. It tests you. It makes you question your progress. It makes you wonder if you're doing the right thing. And I felt that. Deeply, there were moments I wanted to go back. Back to what was familiar. Back to what felt safe. Even if it wasn't good for me, because comfort is tempting. Even when it's toxic. But then I reminded myself of that porch. Of that note. Of that feeling. And I asked myself one simple question. Do you really want to go back to that? And the answer was always the same. No, because I had seen the truth, and once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. So I kept moving forward. Even when it felt lonely. Even when it felt uncertain. Even when it felt hard, because I knew what was ahead had to be better than what I left behind, and slowly things started aligning. Not perfectly, but meaningfully. Opportunities appeared, new connections formed, new paths opened. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because I had changed. That I was thinking differently, choosing differently, living differently. And that created new results. That's something most people don't realize. Your life doesn't change by chance. It changes by choice. And every choice you make either moves you forward, or keeps you stuck. I had spent so long being stuck. Now I was finally moving. And that movement, it felt powerful. But just when everything started making sense, life presented one final test point, one that would challenge everything I had become. Not to break me, but to confirm that I was truly different, and what happened next would define everything. So if you've made it this far, don't stop now, because the final part is where everything comes together, where the pain turns into purpose, where the struggle turns into strength, and where you finally understand why everything had to happen this way. And then it happened, the moment I didn't expect, the moment I wasn't prepared for, but the moment that proved everything had truly changed. I saw them again. Not in my memories. Not in my thoughts. That I in real life, face to face. For a second, everything froze. Time slowed down. My heart started beating faster. Old emotions tried to rise again. The same feelings, the same memories, the same pain that once controlled me. Have you ever faced something from your past that once broke you? That moment where you don't know if you're still the same person, or someone completely different. That's where I was, standing there, looking at the people who once made me feel like I didn't belong. The same people who packed my life into boxes and left it outside like it meant nothing. And for a brief moment, that old voice came back. Remember what they did. Remember how it felt. Remember how you weren't enough. But this time, something was different. I didn't react. I didn't break. I didn't shrink. I observed calmly, silently. And that's when I realized I had changed. Not because they changed, but because I did. The power they once had over me was gone. Completely gone. And that feeling, it's hard to explain. It's not anger. It's not revenge. It's peace, real peace. The kind that comes when you finally let go. Not of the memory, but of the control it had over you. They looked at me like they didn't expect to see me like this, strong, composed, unshaken. And maybe they didn't, because the version of me they knew would have reacted differently, would have felt small, would have questioned everything again. But that version no longer existed. And in that moment, I didn't need to say anything, because my presence said everything. That I had survived, that I had rebuilt, that I had grown, and most importantly, I had found myself. And that was enough. That I walked away. Not out of fear, but out of strength, because I didn't need closure from them anymore. That I had already given it to myself. And that's when everything truly came together. Every painful moment, every sleepless night, every doubt, every step forward. That it all made sense. That it wasn't there to destroy me. That it was there to transform me, to force me to see my worth, to push me out of a life where I was settling, into a life where I was rising. And that's the truth most people never understand. Sometimes, life has to break your comfort to build your strength. Sometimes, it has to remove people to reveal your value. Sometimes, it has to hurt you to wake you up. And if you're listening to this right now feeling lost, feeling rejected, feeling like everything is falling apart, listen carefully. This is not the end. This is your turning point. Right here. Right now, because everything you've been through, it's not meaningless. That it's shaping you. That it's preparing you. That it's building a version of you that you haven't even met yet. But you will. That if you don't give up, if you don't go back, that if you keep moving forward. Because the moment you choose yourself, everything changes. Your mindset, your energy, your direction, and your future. So stop waiting, stop doubting. Stop looking for answers in the past, they're not there. Your answers are in your next step, in your next decision, in your willingness to rise. Even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one is watching, because this journey, it's not about proving anything to others, it's about becoming someone you're proud of. Someone strong, someone wise, someone unshakable. And that person is already inside you, waiting for you to choose them. So choose right now, not tomorrow, not later. Now say it to yourself. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Again. I am what I choose to become. Let that sink in. Let that become your truth, because from this moment, everything can change, and one day, you'll look back at this chapter of your life, not with pain, but with gratitude, because it made you stronger, because it showed you your worth, because it forced you to rise. And that's the greatest gift of all. So don't be afraid of endings, because sometimes, they are the beginning of everything you've been waiting for. And if this story reached your heart, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you of your own strength, then don't ignore it. Act on it. Right now, and before you leave, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because this is more than just a story. This is a reminder that no matter how broken things feel, you can rebuild, and no matter how lost you feel, you can find your way, and no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can rise again. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this, because you never know who's silently struggling, waiting for a message like this. And remember, you are not finished, you are not forgotten, and your story is just getting started.